There is a house in Sussex where the park rolls for 700 acres through ancient oak and beech woodland, and where on a grey October morning the deer come down to the lake to drink before the first visitors arrive. And if you approach Petworth along the drive from the north, past the medieval church of St Mary's, past the old market cross, past the high wall of coat-hail-coloured limestone that the locals call the Park Wall, you will round a bend in the road and see something that should not exist in an English country market town. Petworth House rises from the edge of its deer park like a Parisian hotel particulier transplanted, a single, continuous 300-foot facade of pale stone, 21 bays across, set directly against the road, with no formal gardens in front of it, no forecourt, no approach. The house gives nothing to the town. The town has, for 300 years, given everything to the house. Petworth House occupies 17 acres of built floor. Its park runs to 700 acres of deer pasture, lake, and ancient woodland, designed by Capability Brown and painted 50 times by J.M.W. Turner. It contains the largest private collection of Turner oil paintings outside the Tate. It holds Van Dyck's, Reynolds's, Gainsborough's, and Grinling Gibbons carvings in quantities unmatched by any other English country house outside Chatsworth or Blenheim, and it was the seat, for 470 years, of the family that Elizabeth I's spy master called the most dangerous Catholic dynasty in England. They walk the carved room, they photograph the Turners in the North Gallery, they pause in the Marble Hall, they buy tea and walnut cake in the Stable Block Cafe, and almost none of them ask the question that the house and the park and the 17th century servants' wing seem to insist upon. Who was this house built to hide? Not a family of ostentation, not a family of politicians, not a family of public service. Petworth was built, rebuilt, and passed through 9 centuries of continuous aristocratic occupation by one line of owners, the Percys, Earls of Northumberland, and through a single Restoration-era marriage, their successors, the Wyndhams, Earls of Egremont, and Barons Leconfield. It was the southern seat of the most powerful Catholic family in post-Reformation England. It was the house where the 9th Earl of Northumberland, Henry Percy, known to history as the Wizard Earl, built a secret room beneath his library, hired a mathematician who may have been the most brilliant scientist working in England in 1600, and was then implicated through the single worst family coincidence of the early Jacobean period in the Gunpowder Plot of 1605. He would spend the next 16 years in the Tower of London. He would emerge at the age of 57, deaf, broken in health, and fined £30,000, the largest criminal fine imposed on any English subject in the 17th century. He would die at Petworth in 1632, a prisoner of his own house. Petworth is one of the most admired country houses in Britain. Its Turner collection alone draws 500,000 visitors a year. Its park is one of the finest surviving Capability Brown landscapes in England. It is also one of the most discreetly compromised houses in England, because behind the pale ashlar and the 700 acres of deer park lies a history of concealment, of priests hidden in roof cavities for 3 generations, of recusant fines paid in cash for 80 years to avoid conversion, of a gunpowder conspiracy whose northern node was a Percy cousin operating out of this very house, of a Wizard Earl's library that contained almost certainly the largest occult science collection in Jacobean England, and of a proud duke who in 1688 rebuilt the whole front elevation in French Baroque stone because he could not bear any longer the medieval castle that the Percys had given him through marriage. Petworth is where English Catholicism went to survive the Reformation, and where English aristocracy went to hide what it had needed to hide to do so. Petworth is the house the National Trust politely does not explain. If you find these deep investigations into Britain's great houses and the hidden lives within them worth your time, please subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment telling me which estate or dynasty we should explore next, and help these stories reach the audience they deserve. It begins with a marriage in 1150. In the middle of the 12th century, Joscelin of Louvain, a younger son of the Duke of Brabant, came to England in the train of his half-sister Adeliza of Louvain, the second wife of Henry I. Joscelin was given a minor barony. He married Agnes de Percy, heiress of the northern branch of the Percy family, and in doing so united two powerful Norman aristocratic lineages, the Percy of Northumberland and the Louvain of Brabant. The combined estates included lands in Yorkshire, Sussex, and along the Welsh marches. Among them was the small Sussex town of Petworth, which had been granted to Joscelin by his half-brother-in-law King Henry I around 1150 as part of his marriage settlement. The first stone building at Petworth dates from approximately 1200. It was a small fortified manor house with a chapel, a hall, and an undercroft. It had a deer park attached, and by 1400 that deer park had been enclosed with the mile-long stone wall that still runs along the northern boundary of the estate. Through the 14th and 15th centuries, the Percy family steadily consolidated their northern landholdings, Alnwick, Warkworth, Prudhoe, and elevated themselves to the Earldom of Northumberland in 1377. Petworth became their southern retreat, a secondary residence where the family withdrew in summer and where, crucially, the younger sons and unmarried daughters of the Earls often lived. It was at Petworth in the early 16th century that the Percy family began to take their first dangerous political decisions. In 1524, Henry Percy, 5th Earl of Northumberland, was granted by Pope Clement VII a dispensation permitting him to build a private chapel at Petworth and to retain a private priest for his household. The dispensation was in no way unusual for a leading Catholic nobleman, but the Percys, by the standards of English aristocracy in the 1520s, were conspicuously Catholic. They had attended Rome, they had funded monasteries, they had sent younger sons into the Dominican order. When Henry VIII broke with Rome in 1533 and proceeded to dissolve the monasteries in 1536, the 6th Earl of Northumberland, Henry Algernon Percy, refused to attend the formal ceremony. His younger brother, Sir Thomas Percy, joined the Pilgrimage of Grace, the great Catholic Northern Rising of 1536. Thomas Percy was arrested, tried for treason, and hanged, drawn and quartered at Tyburn in 1537. The 6th Earl himself died in 1537, childless and broken, the year his brother was executed. His nephew Thomas, 7th Earl, succeeded him. He was 7 years old. The 7th Earl grew up during the Catholic restoration of Mary I, became Earl in practice in 1557, and was by temperament a committed Catholic. He was also loyal to his queen, Mary I. When Mary died in 1558, and Elizabeth I succeeded her, Thomas Percy faced a choice. He could conform, he could convert, he could accept the Elizabethan religious settlement, as most English aristocrats would in the course of the next decade. Or he could, as his uncle had done 20 years earlier, rebel. In 1569, in concert with Charles Neville, Earl of Westmoreland, he rebelled. The rising of the North was one of the most serious threats to Elizabeth's throne she would face in her early reign. It united the Percys, the Nevilles, and roughly 3,000 northern Catholic retainers in an armed march across Yorkshire intended eventually to free Mary Queen of Scots from English imprisonment and place her on the throne of England. The rising collapsed within 6 weeks. Thomas Percy fled to Scotland. He was captured in 1572 and extradited to York. He was beheaded there in August 1572. The Percy estates, including Petworth, were attainted. They were returned to the family, however, in 1576, when Elizabeth, pragmatic as always, decided that keeping the Percy interests loyal in the north was more important than punishing them into extinction. The attainder was reversed. The 8th Earl succeeded. The family retained the earldom and Petworth. The 8th Earl was Henry Percy, Thomas's younger brother, and even more obstinately Catholic than his executed predecessor. He was accused in 1584 of plotting with the Throckmorton conspiracy against Elizabeth. He was imprisoned in the Tower of London. He was found dead in his cell on the night of the 21st of June, 1585, shot in the chest with a pistol that was still in his hand. The Crown declared it a suicide. The Percy family, then and since, insisted it was murder by Crown agents who could not secure a conviction against him by due process. The 8th Earl was buried without a monument in the Tower Chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. His son, Henry Percy, 9th Earl of Northumberland, succeeded in 1585 at the age of 21. He was the man history would come to call the Wizard Earl. The 9th Earl was a different creature from his father and his uncle. He was not, in any political sense, a Catholic rebel. He conformed, more or less, outwardly. He had attended Cambridge. He had travelled in France and Italy. He was an intellectual in the formal Renaissance sense, a reader, an experimenter, an astronomer, a chemist, a collector of manuscripts, a patron of mathematicians, and he had decided, in the late 1580s, that the great project of his life would not be politics or the Percy military tradition, but the accumulation at Petworth of what was, by 1600, probably the largest private scientific and occult library in England. He hired Thomas Harriot. Thomas Harriot was, in the estimation of modern historians of science, possibly the most original mathematician of the Elizabethan period. He had been the chief cartographer of the 1585 Roanoke expedition. He was making optical observations of the moons of Jupiter in 1609. 4 months before Galileo, he had developed his own system of algebraic notation. He had corresponded on mathematical problems with John Dee, Johannes Kepler, and the young René Descartes. He lived from about 1593 in a cottage on the grounds of the Percy estate at Sion House, and he moved between Sion and Petworth throughout the 1590s and 1600s, with a standing salary of £120 a year and a small team of assistants, among them the younger mathematicians Walter Warner and Robert Hughes, who together with Harriot were known at court as the Three Magi. The Percy Library at Petworth in 1605 contained roughly 2,500 manuscripts and printed books. It held Hebrew Kabbalistic texts. It held Arabic alchemical manuscripts. It held John Dee's Monus Hieroglyphica. It held, in translation, almost all of the major Neoplatonist works of the Florentine Renaissance. It held texts on necromancy, on divination, on celestial magic, on the construction of astrolabes. It held a complete run of Paracelsus. It held a manuscript of a recently composed Italian grimoire that had been smuggled out of Rome by a cardinal's servant. The collection was not unique in Europe, it was almost unique in England, and the man who had built it was, by the opening years of the 17th century, already beginning to be described in whispered court conversation as a practicing sorcerer. He was none of those things. He was a Renaissance natural philosopher of the kind that every major Italian and German court had been employing for a century. He was not an English Catholic recusant. He had conformed to the Elizabethan and the Jacobean settlement. He had attended Parliament. He had sat on the Privy Council. But his second cousin, Thomas Percy, was one of the 5 principal conspirators of the Gunpowder Plot. Thomas Percy was a hot-tempered Catholic fanatic who had been born at the Castle of Beverley in 1560. He had served the Percy family as a gentleman pensioner for most of his adult life. By 1603, he was a member of Queen Anne's household at court. He had converted, in his late 30s, to an extreme militant Catholicism. He entered the Gunpowder Conspiracy in the spring of 1604, rented the cellar under the House of Lords in March 1605, and was one of the 5 conspirators who actually placed the 36 barrels of gunpowder there in July 1605. On the 4th of November 1605, the plot was uncovered. On the 5th of November, Thomas Percy was identified. On the 8th of November, Thomas Percy and 4 other conspirators were cornered at Holbeshire House in Staffordshire. Thomas Percy was shot through the chest with a single bullet in a gun battle with royal troops. He died that evening. It was, according to the official report of the Sheriff of Staffordshire, an almost impossibly lucky shot. The bullet had passed through Robert Catesby, the chief conspirator, and then through Thomas Percy, killing both with a single ball. The sheriff was commended for the marksmanship of his men. Modern historians have, very slightly, wondered why both of the two Gunpowder Plot conspirators who might have been questioned about the involvement of the 9th Earl of Northumberland were conveniently killed before they could be interrogated. Henry Percy, the 9th Earl, learned of his cousin's role from a messenger at Petworth on the afternoon of the 6th of November, 1605. He rode immediately for London. He was arrested in his own coach outside his London house, Northumberland House, on the Strand, on the night of the 27th of November. He was taken to the Tower of London. He would remain there, a prisoner, for the next 16 years. He was never formally tried for treason. The Crown could not establish his involvement in the plot. Thomas Harriot, questioned in December 1605 about whether he had cast an astrological chart for the success of the plot, denied it categorically and was released after 3 weeks. The Earl himself was held on a charge of misprision of treason, the technical offence of failing to report knowledge of a treasonable conspiracy. In the Star Chamber judgment of June 1606, he was fined £30,000, the largest criminal fine in the history of English law to that point. He was sentenced to imprisonment at the King's pleasure. He was confined in comfortable apartments in the Martin Tower of the Tower of London, where he was permitted books, servants, and visits from Harriot and the other mathematicians who continued to come and go from the tower throughout the 1610s. He hired John Tradescant as his gardener and ordered flowers planted in the tower's small courtyard. He was finally released in July 1621 after 16 years on payment of a reduced portion of his fine. He was 57. He was deaf. He was frail. He returned to Petworth. He died there on the 5th of November 1632, the 27th anniversary, day for day, of the uncovering of the Gunpowder Plot that had destroyed him. His son, Algernon Percy, 10th Earl, lived at Petworth from 1632 to his death in 1668. The 11th Earl, Jocelyn Percy, inherited in 1668. He died without sons in 1670. The male line of the Percys ended, and Petworth, with all its estates and its library and its deer park, passed through the 11th Earl's only surviving child, Lady Elizabeth Percy, to the Seymour family. Lady Elizabeth Percy was 3 years old when her father died. She would be one of the most significant heiresses in late 17th century England. At the age of 12, she was married to the Earl of Ogle, who died within 4 months. At 13, she was married to Thomas Thynne of Longleat, who was assassinated in 1682 by hired killers of a Swedish count, Count Königsmark, who wanted her himself. At 15, in May 1682, she was married for a third time, now to Charles Seymour, 6th Duke of Somerset. The Duke of Somerset, known to history as the Proud Duke, was one of the most disagreeable men in Restoration English society. He was intensely aware of his own status, exhaustingly formal in manner, and by every contemporary account, pompous beyond description. He was also rich, and between 1688 and 1702, he demolished the entire medieval Percy manor house at Petworth and rebuilt it in French Baroque style. The Proud Duke's rebuild is the Petworth that exists today. The 300-foot west front, the single unified stone facade, the marble hall, the grand staircase, the state apartments, all were built between 1688 and 1702, probably to designs derived from the French architect Daniel Marot, or possibly from the English architect William Talman, although there is no documented architect of record for the whole project. The Duke wanted a house in the Paris manner, on the Paris scale, with Paris furniture and Paris wall hanging. He commissioned Grinling Gibbons to carve the limewood panels of the carved room, the single greatest surviving interior by by Gibbons anywhere in Europe. He imported French upholsterers and Dutch ceiling painters. He installed a gallery for the Van Dycks and Lellys that his Percy wife had inherited. He hated his Percy wife. The marriage between the proud Duke and Elizabeth Percy was reputed, in Restoration Court gossip, to be the unhappiest in high society. The Duke insisted that his Duchess was never to sit down in his presence unless expressly permitted. He insisted his daughters remain standing during family meals. He famously, on one occasion, disinherited a daughter for sitting down in his chair while he was out of the room. But Elizabeth Percy had brought him Petworth, and in Petworth, for the rest of his long life, he continued to build. The 7th Duke of Somerset succeeded in 1748. His grandson sold the Northumberland estates in 1750. The Somerset line at Petworth ended in 1750 with the death without male heirs of the 7th Duke, whereupon the Petworth estate passed to a grandnephew, Charles Wyndham, 2nd Earl of Egremont, through the Percy female line. The Wyndham Earls of Egremont held Petworth for the rest of the 18th and through most of the 19th century. It was under the 3rd Earl of Egremont, George Wyndham, who inherited in 1763 and lived at Petworth until his death in 1837, that the house became the extraordinary Turner-era artistic court that is still preserved in its galleries. The 3rd Earl never married. He had, instead, a long-term relationship with a woman called Elizabeth Iliff, by whom he had 7 illegitimate children, 5 of whom survived to adulthood. The eldest, George Wyndham, would eventually be created 1st Baron Leconfield in 1859 and would inherit the Petworth estate from his father, though not the Egremont earldom, which was extinguished at the 3rd Earl's death. The 3rd Earl was the 2nd most prolific art patron in English country house history, after the 6th Duke of Devonshire at Chatsworth. He gave Turner a studio inside the north wing of Petworth in the 1820s and 1830s, where Turner produced some of the most luminous landscape paintings of his career. The Petworth Turners were mostly bequeathed in the 20th century, but those that remained at the house are among the most intimate surviving works by any English painter. The Leconfield family held Petworth until 1947, when the 3rd Baron Leconfield, one of the first peers to take advantage of the 1937 National Trust Act, transferred the house and principal contents to the National Trust in lieu of death duties, while retaining a family wing and private gardens. The Leconfield heir still occupies part of the building today. The public rooms are open from March to November. The Turner collection, the Grinling Gibbons carvings, and the Capability Brown Parkland are among the most visited cultural attractions on the Sussex coast. But the house, the 6th Duke of Somerset, rebuilt in 1688, was not lit or heated or cleaned or defended by the proud Duke whose name is carved on the entrance gate. Their presence at Petworth is documented, recorded in ink on paper in the Petworth estate accounts, in the Sussex Quarter Sessions records, and in the parish registers of St Mary's Petworth, held at the West Sussex Record Office at Chichester. Their stories are not. There was a steward called Humphrey Tusser, who ran the Petworth estate accounts under the 9th Earl during the Wizard Earl's 16-year imprisonment in the Tower of London, and whose correspondence with the Earl in the Tower, more than 380 surviving letters between 1605 and 1621, is held today in the Alnwick Castle Archive. Tusser was a Sussex farmer's son. He had been trained as a clerk at Oxford. He managed a household of 64 indoor servants and an estate staff of more than 200. He kept the Earl's books correctly, remitted the recusancy fines that the Earl continued to pay from the Tower, and maintained the Petworth Gardens without his master for a decade and a half. He died in 1627, 5 years before the Earl's own death. There is no portrait of him. There is no grave marker at St Mary's. We know his handwriting and not his face. There was a priest's servant called Isabel Lutton, who appears in the Sussex recusancy rolls of 1595 as having been fined 10 shillings for refusing to attend Anglican services at Petworth Parish Church. She served in the kitchens of Petworth House from approximately 1580 until 1604. She was The rolls suggest the wife of a seminary priest who was resident in the household during the 9th Earl's early years. Her husband is named only as the priest, and he was, on a day in February 1596, smuggled out of Petworth into the coastal escape route of the Sussex Catholic network. She died in 1611. She is buried in the churchyard, her grave unmarked. There was a gamekeeper called Thomas Flowers, who served the 3rd Earl of Egremont for 42 years, from 1795 to 1837, and whose principal task was to manage the deer population of the park at approximately 780 head. He is named in the Egremont estate wage book 498 times. He married a Petworth housemaid called Mary Prangley in 1802. They had 11 children, of whom 9 survived. His sons continued as gamekeepers on the estate for 3 further generations. His great-great-grandson, Peter Flowers, retired from the Leconfield estate staff in 2019. They appear in the records as footnotes: a name beside a sum, a recusancy fine, a parish register, and then they vanish into the silence that swallows everyone in a great house who is not a member of the family that owns it. We do not know their faces. We do not know how they saw the family they served. We know only that they were there, that the house they kept running is still standing, and that their names survived, some of them, because the West Sussex Record Office and the Alnwick Castle Archive and the Petworth Parish Registers were kept, and nobody threw them away. The Percys and the Wyndhams assembled the greatest private collection of English painting outside Chatsworth. Other men and women kept the roof sound, the deer herd at 780, and a seminary priest hidden in the chapel for 6 generations. The house absorbed both. Stand at the gatehouse on the north side of Petworth on a November afternoon. Stand at the North Gatehouse on a November afternoon with the proud Duke's 300-foot facade stretching west in pale stone, and the deer moving slowly across the middle ground of the park, and you see what every visitor has seen for 300 years, a great European manor country house above an English town. But look closer, and the picture complicates. The facade is ashlar-faced masonry over a medieval core. The west end of the house is, in its foundations, the original Percy Manor of 1309. The chapel on the east is pre-Reformation, and the wood panelling inside it, dated 1535, is one of the last surviving pre-dissolution private chapels in Sussex. The Grinling Gibbons carved room is a reconstruction of a 1690s interior using panels rescued from 2 other rooms after an 1869 fire. The Turner pictures you can see in the North Gallery are the survivors. The library, which held 2,500 books in 1605, contains approximately 900 today. What was not sold in 1680, in 1750, and in 1923. The whole building is a curated memory of an English Catholic resistance that ceased to matter in 1688 and an English aristocratic art patronage that ceased to matter in 1914, preserved by a family who gave the house to the nation in 1947 and have been quietly managing its meaning ever since. Petworth is not one house, it is the record, in limewood and stone and paint, of what English aristocratic Catholicism had to conceal in order to survive, and of what English Protestant aristocracy had to rebuild in order to forget. The 9th Earl wanted a library of Renaissance magic. The Tower took it. The proud Duke wanted a French Baroque house. He got it, and he hated his wife. The 3rd Earl of Egremont wanted Turner. He got Turner. The 3rd Baron Leconfield wanted to keep the house without the crippling death duties that killed Wentworth Woodhouse and Cliveden. The National Trust gave him that. Each owner got what he asked for. The house gave each of them the thing they said they wanted. The house always gives. That is its genius, and that is its cost, because what Petworth has also preserved in its estate books and its recusancy rolls and its parish registers and its wage ledgers is the names of the Humphrey Tussers and the Isabel Luttons and the Thomas Flowerses, without whom no priest could have been smuggled out, and no deer park maintained, and no Turner studio cleaned for his morning's work. The Wyndhams are in the Chichester Cathedral monument. Isabel Luton is in an unmarked grave. Petworth asks the same question that all great houses ask, but with a particularly Sussex sharpness that no other English country house quite matches. Who does a house belong to? The Percys, who held the land for 400 years and lost 2 of its earls to the executioner and another to the Tower. The Wizard Earl, who bought mathematical instruments that he was not permitted to use for 16 years. The proud Duke, who built a facade his wife could not sit down in. The 3rd Earl of Egremont, who lived for 74 years without marrying a woman he loved, and left his 7 children legally illegitimate. The Turner paintings that the 20th century has bought and sold and parcelled into trusts. The National Trust, which now charges £24 for a full visit. The current Lord Egremont, Max Wyndham, who still occupies the family's private wing. Or the park itself, the 700 acres of Sussex deer, pasture and ancient woodland that was here before Jocelyn of Louvain became a baron, and will be here long after the last visitor has gone home. Petworth does not answer. The house never answers. It simply stands, pale stone and 300 feet long, between a market town it dominates and a park it inhabits, and lets you decide. And somewhere above the chapel door in the east wing, behind a panel of Jacobean oak that visitors are not usually shown, there is a small cavity in the masonry, approximately 2 feet by 5, which the 9th Earl's household used as a priest hole during the anti-Catholic raids of the 1610s. The cavity is empty. Nothing has been found in it since 1938, when a single Latin missal, printed in Antwerp in 1592, was discovered on a ledge inside. The missal is in the Petworth Library. The cavity is still there. They are still down there. They always will be. If this story moved you, challenged you, or made you see a house differently, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me which estate, dynasty, or hidden history we should investigate next. There are hundreds of these stories waiting to be told, and every one of them is hiding something beneath the surface.